Anyway, let's get to Canberra now. Matt Canavan joins me. You had them on the ropes today. AEMO, Matt, was put under a lot of pressure. As we suspected, you've long suspected and argued that we're not going to get cheaper prices out of this move to renewables at all. So there goes Chris Bowen's argument at the election.
Well, there goes the Prime Minister's promise. I mean, he promised to us infamously. I think almost everybody knows that now. He promised us almost 100 times before the last election that his and Chris Bowen's plans, would lower your power bills by $275. That, of course, has not happened. The average power bill's up by more than $500, and many large families and large homes are $1,000 or more extra, paying that much extra after the Labor government got elected. And I suppose there's still been this implication, or there's implied that, we just need to get a bit more solar, a bit more wind, a bit more hydrogen, and your power prices will ultimately come down. Well, as was revealed today in the Senate, we finally had the energy market operator appear before us. They're the ones that plan all this, provide all this information to the rest of us, all this propaganda, saying renewables is cheaper. They couldn't guarantee us that power prices will fall. And a real investigation has to be happened here. This is the first time we've been able to have the energy market operator before the Senate. They don't normally come to the annual Senate estimates process. They're not a government agency, but they're in charge of almost everything. And as late as 3 months ago, Daniel Westerman, the CEO of AEMO, was claiming on Sky News that renewable energy was the cheapest form of power. Today, he had to admit under oath in the Senate that, in fact, his modelling measures no such thing, that what their modelling does is start with the assumption that we'll have to get to 82% renewables by 2030, start with the assumption that we have to get to net zero emissions by 2050, and then they look at the lowest cost way to get to that. It doesn't actually measure that the 82% target for renewables or the net zero emissions by 2050 is lower cost than, say, continuing to invest in a coal-fired power fleet. It does nothing of that kind, even though he has been out there in public implying that it did, and hoodwinking the Australian public into thinking that somehow the government's renewables obsession is a cheap option for consumers.
What you also got too was an admission that the integrated system plan that they use for this transition to net zero doesn't factor in the cost-benefit analysis of the transition and transmission and all the other things. Now, we know that from a Biden administration Energy Department report, but that's also got to be debated as well, doesn't it?
Well, I think we deserve, finally, Peter, we deserve to have a proper assessment of how much this net zero emissions by 2050 commitment is costing us all. You remember well that we signed up to that under duress, effectively, from the US, the UK, other countries, when we had to go to that Glasgow conference, fly over hundreds of public servants to a climate change conference, and almost overnight, our country adopted this policy, which does mean, what it means is that we would fundamentally change how we make everything, grow our food, transport ourselves around our country, our vast country. We'd do all that in a generation. We'd fundamentally change everything, how that all does, in just 25 odd years. Now, it's turning out to be a complete farce. Hardly any other country is taking this seriously. Unfortunately, we're one of the few countries that do take our international commitments seriously, but we're doing so with a blindfold over our eyes. We have never had a proper assessment of, in fact, how much does net zero by 2050 cost. And I think it's about time we have a proper government-funded independent investigation into how much that is costing us. And the only way to do that is actually estimate, well, how much would power prices be if we built new coal-fired power stations like China's doing? They're building 2 a week. If we invested in oil and gas, like the US is doing, they produced more oil than any country in any year ever last year, under the Biden administration, nonetheless. So we need, I think, Australian people who are suffering with high power prices, Australian businesses who are going out the back door because of their high energy bills. They deserve a government that gives them the figures, gives them the facts, exactly how much does net zero cost.
Matty, just quickly, we've got to go, but the sun tax, what's the sun tax you've uncovered?
Yeah, I think a lot of people aren't aware of this, but come mid-next year, if you're in New South Wales and on the Ausgrid network, you will be paying to export your solar energy to the grid. You have to actually pay. Now, for some consumers, apparently, under questioning today, there won't be any way of getting out of this, apart from building some kind of Mr. Burns contraption and blocking off your solar panels from the sun. putting them under shade or something. You'll be paying a tax because you have solar panels on your roof. Now, the rationale for this is to force people to buy a battery. But what if you don't have $10,000? At least it costs at least $10,000. What if you don't have $10,000 to buy a battery? You have to pay that tax. And we were all told, Peter, it's another sacred cow that's dying here. We were all told, remember, that the sun is free. Remember that? We were all told the sun is free. It comes down for nothing. Now you're having to pay for it. The government's planning to tax you. They've got a sun tax on your solar panels. It just shows the absurd levels to which we've run our energy system into the ground. It is so sad.
Not wrong. We'll leave it there, Matt Canavan. Well done. The truth is starting to come out.